I will speak about what we know. I will speak about what we know, and then we will have Dr. Ricardo Alvarez speak to us from California, and then we will hear from Reverend Collins. On Friday, I spoke to Mumia in the morning and noted that his speech was altered. It was labored. I had to do some work with him, and I got on with the business of doing work with him. And then Mumia Abu-Jamal called Pam Africa that afternoon and articulated to her that he was having labored breathing and pressure in his chest, a weight in his chest. He'd had it for some time, but was articulating to us very clearly that he felt the problem. I will preface this by saying that I've been visiting Mumia for the past 15 years, including during his years, 28 years on death row. And Mumia is a very stoic individual. He rarely complains about his health, even though, as you know, he's been at death's door. So when Pam Africa gets the message from Mumia that he is having labored breathing and pain in his chest, this sends a clear message, because we never hear these words of infirmity from Mumia, and we mobilized immediately. We had an emergency meeting, and the word went out that Mumia had COVID symptoms. Mumia called me the next morning on Saturday, and I asked him a series of questions, and he said, "Do you know what it's like to attempt to walk and to feel like there is a little elephant on your chest? Do you know what it is to try to do the things you do on a daily basis, and you're stopped in your tracks because you can't breathe?" And I asked him a series of other questions, and it was clear to me that there was a problem, but we needed more information. Because of the pressure placed on the prison system, Mumia was tested for COVID and its antigens. And we were told by the prison that those tests came negative. However, Mumia remains a 66-year-old man with liver damage because the prison in the last 5 years failed to, in a timely fashion, address his hepatitis C crisis. They delayed treatment of hepatitis C, and as a result, he has liver damage. In addition, he has high blood pressure. After speaking to a number of doctors, we are told that labored breathing and a sense of heaviness in the chest can be any of a number of serious, dangerous conditions for a 66-year-old man with liver damage and high blood pressure. We know that the prisons are a death trap in American society today. We are living in pandemic, and we in the United States have a prison system that has resisted decarceration when countries around the world, including Iran, have massively released prisoners. We are holding a population captive in prisons that the prisons cannot protect. And the demand of prison abolitionists, people who have a conscience, is that all prisoners over the age of 50 should be released immediately because they will die as they have died, many of them, if they contract COVID. But it's not just COVID. It's hepatitis C that's rampant in our prisons. It's diabetes. It's high blood pressure. And a series of other diseases of poverty that emerge in the prisons and in poor neighborhoods because our healthcare system is not interested in saving lives. I'll say this. We've been through the war in the last year, and some of us have grown a heart, and our humanity has expanded. Why? Because when people are ill, seriously ill, as we've seen in this country, over 500,000 people dead unnecessarily because of COVID. When people are sick, they come face to face with mortality. And when we talk about mortality, we're talking about our common humanity. And at some point we have to ask the question, who are we as a society? Who are we who are willing to allow elderly people, disproportionately Black and Latino, to die in their elder years prematurely, unnecessarily, because of the vindictiveness of the criminal justice system? In the 1980s and 90s, the United States mass incarcerated Black and brown communities that the system could not employ. Today we talk about joblessness and deindustrialization as if it were a white working class problem. But before it became a white working class problem, it was a Black working class problem in Philadelphia. It was a Latino working class problem in Philadelphia when industries evacuated, left the cities en masse. And what did the state do? It warehoused people that it could not employ. And those people were Black and Latino. It was a system that was vindictive and punitive and draconian. And people got life sentences and 40-year sentences for crimes that today are not crimes, like drugs, right? Marijuana. This is an industry in American society today. Well, those people who were imprisoned in the 1980s and 90s who got 40-year sentences and life sentences are now elderly in American prisons. And I remember that when I first visited Mumia in general population, I was shocked that the men around him were coming in wheelchairs and were very infirm, using canes. Again, if we say that Black Lives Matter, it has to matter when it comes to imprisoned people of all shades, poor, Black, Latino, who are the victims of a system that seeks to keep people at the bottom of society in their place, a system that used white supremacy and racism to scapegoat the Black and Latino working class in America for all of the problems in this society. Mumia is a representative of a broader crisis of unjust, unfair, racist incarceration. He is an elderly man. He is an eloquent radio journalist. He is innocent. He was framed by the Philadelphia police and the Philadelphia establishment. This summer, the progressive DA of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, was interviewed by Amy Goodman. Amy Goodman asked him a pointed question about police corruption in the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And Larry Krasner said at that time, it was in July or August of 2020, that yes, Mumia's case is a microcosm of everything that is wrong with the criminal justice system, and it is a microcosm of the crisis of police corruption and tampering with evidence to obtain convictions on the part of the police. So we're saying Mumia is sick. He's been sickened by the system. He has been railroaded in the courts. There are 6 boxes that have emerged in this very building that point to the fact that the main witness in Mumia's case, Robert Chobert, was bribed to finger Mumia as the shooter of Daniel Faulkner. We are here to ask the city of Philadelphia, to ask this country, to stand with the common humanity of all of us who have faced illness, who've witnessed our loved ones die. And we are asking the city, the media corps, the nation, to bring our elderly people home. Let them go. They serve nothing in prison. They're doing nothing in prison but being held captive by a vindictive system. People over the age of 50 will not be offenders again. They are sick. They've been held by an unjust and criminal system, a system that is racist, that targets people of color. And we need Mumia Abu-Jamal, who's desperately ill, and who needs assistance, medical assistance, to come home. Again, the conditions are labored breathing and a weight on his chest, pressure and pain on his chest. If any of you felt this way, you would immediately seek help. Right. Immediately. It would be no nonsense. Immediately you would try to seek the best possible care to save your life. So we are going to now hear from Dr. Ricardo Alvarez, who's joining us from California. Thank you very much for joining us.
Woo-hoo. Thanks, Johanna.
Ricardo, you're with us. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, we hear you now.
Okay. First of all, I want to begin by thanking Dr. Fernandez for giving us. Okay, are we on?
We on. You can be heard
Okay.
clearly.
Okay.
Clean as a whistle, you're coming through.
Okay. First, I want to begin by thanking Dr. Fernandez for giving us a beautiful and powerful understanding of just what is going on with regard to Mumia's health. But as Mumia makes clear, the health of all of our prisoners, our elder prisoners in COVID time. We begin with an understanding that the medical community is having a deeper understanding of COVID compassion, to understand that racism is a public health crisis. This is through the American Public Health Association, through counties across the nation, and at the prestigious University of Pennsylvania, there's a national petition identifying racism as a public health crisis. We also begin by understanding that we're having this press conference to save and support the life of not just Mumia, but all our elders in prison during COVID. And Mumia makes clear that the challenges he's facing are faced by other elders. We also begin with an understanding that Mumia has a court-documented, legitimate basis for having a distrust of the medical system when you have a brilliant, nationally recognized hepatologist and Dr. Truskin, whose court documentation made clear negligence. I also want to say that the symptoms he is having are going to be treated by one thing: his freedom. We will be engaged in institutional distrust, which is legitimated by the fact that Mumia has been a target of state oppression through his whole life since a youth. His treatment is his freedom. Within the institutional medical system, it is a healthy response for him to feel fear to seek care. Understand these conditions of COVID are so straining to be held for 23 and a half hours a day, when there is a simple response that is rooted in a public health measure, and it is this simple response: free our elders. There's excellent data coming from Dr. Bree Williams here at UCSF and across the country showing that when we release our elder prisoners, they are not the public health safety risk. This is racism for them to be incarcerated. Their long-term incarceration is an assault on the consciousness of all of us. This nation can now take a powerful stand that is rooted in public health principles to say, free our elders. And I also want to acknowledge the strain that this puts, not just on those who have communication like Dr. Fernandez and the beautiful Pam Africa, but the family, the strains it puts on the supporters, the emotional strains it puts on us as we have to navigate a system for which we have to be a fierce defender of Mumia's life, because we can't trust the system. The information that came to us came through lawyers. It came through lawyers to another lawyer, because there's an open case acknowledging the harm that came to Mumia. And as a medical provider, we're part of a widening community that's asking reporters and the public to emerge with COVID compassion, with a clear understanding. It's time now to free our elders in prison.
Dr. Alvarez, can you tell us a little bit about the work you do?
For 25 years, I've worked on the front line at a community health center that takes all comers. If you are homeless, if you are undocumented, if you are drug addicted, we take all comers. And in that 25 years of frontline work in different capacities, as director of the HIV clinic, as medical director of the clinic, and now as a clinical coordinator of innovation, in this capacity, what we understand is that there's an enormous amount of trauma that's suffered by our community, and that trauma is a result directly of racism and state policies for which we accept the premise that we can brutally imprison our community. And in that work, in that trauma, what we've appreciated is that there's a deep distrust of institutions, which we have to validate. It is healthy for a prisoner to question whether or not a vaccine coming into their body is right or wrong. It is healthy for a prisoner to question that. The fact that we're having these conversations, Dr. Fernandez, is rooted in a deep understanding that we must validate this distrust because we have to earn the trust.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Ricardo Alvarez, for the compassion with which you've spoken to us today. I think doctors across the country can learn from compassionate care of Black people, of migrants, Latinos, prisoners here in the United States and across the world. Thank you so very much for your service to Mumia and to all imprisoned people in the United States.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to now give it up to invite Reverend Collins to share some words with us. Thank you so very much, Reverend Collins, for joining us this morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, hey.
I had the privilege to spend 3 hours with Mumia, July 4th, 2019. 3 of the most powerful hours of my life. I've been involved in prison ministry for over 30 years. I'm not a part of any nonprofit industrial complex. I do it because it's the right thing to do.
That's right.
I don't get paid to do it. I don't do it for clicks and likes. And I grew up listening to Mumia as a teenager. And he told me that he wanted to change the name of the high school. He started as a teenager, as an activist, and he was targeted by Mayor Rizzo and all the other elite of the establishment of this city from a teenager. And yet he continued to fight for the people. We are running gulags here in America. They are letting people die and not even notifying the families. Mr. Wetzel, blood is on your hands. Mr. Wolf, blood is on your hands. There was a gentleman that was up for release through parole, and he died because Mr. Wolf did not sign the release papers in time. This is the level of disconnect and the disconnect and totally disregard for human life. The scriptures encourage us in Hebrews 13:8 to remember those that are in bonds. See, the system wants us to forget about Mumia, wants us to forget about Russell Schultz, wants us to forget about all the political prisoners, all that have been incarcerated by an unjust system. They want us to forget. But we're here to remember. 40 years later, we're still here. Mr. Krasner came in office as a reformer. And he did some good things as a civil rights attorney. But now we're talking about not just doing a good thing, but doing the right thing. We're not playing morals here. We're not playing a little right thing, but I can't do the big right thing. No, Mr. Krasner, do the right thing. Exercise your consciousness to do the right thing. When you study this case, when you look at the documentaries, you'll see that the evidence shows clearly that he could not have shot Officer Faulkner. Clearly. When you look at the statements of Judge Stabo, when you look at the statements of the police, how they were convicted of perjury, there is no way that a thinking person can say that this man is not innocent. And at the minimum, he's deserving of a new trial. He's deserving of the evidence to go into court. So we're standing here today to say our brother is sick. I'm talking to a brother right now in Dallas that's on the verge. They're locked down. That's it, 23 hours a day. They have no COVID precaution. They have no masks. They have no sanitization. We can't depend on the system to say who is or is not infected with COVID. He needs an independent test. He needs to be released, as all of our elders do, because guess what? They're not coming to Lafayette Hills. They're not coming to Old City. They're not coming to all the elite creme de la creme. They're coming to the hood to be with the people that love them. They're coming to be with the people that respect them. They're coming to mentor our youth that need someone to look up to. So we're saying here today in front of all the people that we believe that Mumia and many, many, many others are deserving of that chance. You can't play God. Mr. Krasner, you're walking in the same footsteps of Ed Rendell. You're walking in the same path of Lynn Abraham. You're walking in the same path of All Inspector, trafficking in black bodies. And it's time to stop. It's time to stop. It's time for the people to rise up. Yes, we don't want certain other people maybe not to get in office, but it's time now to say we are here for the greater good. And the greater good is to release all of our political prisoners and all of our unjust prisoners. The scripture says, I was in prison and you visited me. And as much as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. So what is happening in the treatment of Brother Mumia and all the other men and women is unto Christ. They say that they are Christian. They say this is a faith-based nation, but it doesn't act like a faith-based nation. It doesn't want to expand and expose the truth. It doesn't want to treat everyone with the same equal rights and the due process of law. So we're here today, on this day, on this Wednesday, to say before the whole world, we stand in solidarity, not only with Mumia, but all those. I talked to Sister Pam this morning. And as the professor said, yes, this is stress. This is trauma. Not only is it epigenetic trauma, but it's trauma that we experience as we visualize this every day. She is under doctor's orders to take time off because she might have a stroke. This is how involved you become when you are passionate about the truth and about justice. So we're here today to express our passion for Mumia and all the others that are unjustly incarcerated And we ask that Mr. Krasner, along with Governor Wolf, do the right thing at this time, that we not see another senseless, needless death. And we're doing this because it's the right thing to do. We want to be on the right side of history. Not on the right side of politics, but the right side of history. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for those words. I want to remind everybody, while you're still here, Reverend Collins, that Martin Luther King said, and will say, and is saying from the grave to Larry Krasner, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. We know that 6 boxes pointing to Mumia's innocence were released from this building, and we need Larry Krasner to take a stand on the right side of justice and conscience and history. And we're asking for the release of Mumia so that he can get the health care he needs. But we're also asking for the release of Russell Maroon Schultz, who got COVID in the prison and he has cancer. 70-some-odd-year-old man. 77-year-old man, Ted Kelly, will speak to us from Prisoner Solidarity Committee.
What's the call? What's the call? What's the call? My name's Ted Kelly from the Prisoner Solidarity Committee of Workers' World Party. I'll be very brief. Nelson Mandela taught us that you can tell the character of a country by how it treats its prisoners, by the conditions of its prisons. Thousands of prisoners in the United States have died from COVID-19 since this pandemic began. Thousands of prisoners have died. This is not the result of an accident. This is not the result of negligence. This is a criminal policy to keep men and women behind bars while a deadly pandemic rips through these concentration camps for poor and oppressed people. I want to bring to your attention, if you haven't already heard, the case of a man named Joe Ligon, who was released from prison this month after being sentenced to life in prison at the age of 15 in 1953. This man is 83 years old and walked out of prison this month for the first time since the Eisenhower administration. That is what this system is. That is the description of this prison nation, as Mumia Abu-Jamal calls it. Governor Wolf, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, they have, and of course, Secretary of the Department of Corrections, John Wetzel, they have the ability, the legal ability to release thousands of prisoners. They have the ability to use the reprieve process to save lives. Bruce Norris is a man who the parole board granted exit from prison. While he was waiting for Governor Wolf to sign those commutation papers, he died of COVID in his cell. The governor, Tom Wolf, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, John Wetzel of the Department of Corrections, they have to do this. They have to release our elders. This is not a mistake. This is a policy to keep them behind bars dying of this deadly pandemic in conditions where it is impossible to social distance, where they are not the ones bringing this virus into the facilities. It's the staff. It's the guards. That's the only way that the virus is getting in. Larry Krasner, Governor Wolf, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman need to ask themselves a question. Are you going to be the men who killed Mumia Abu-Jamal? Or are you going to do what is necessary and what is right and release him? Release him now! Release him now! Release him now! I've had the honor and the pleasure to meet with Mumia at length many times. He is a brilliant man. He is a very kind man. He was born the same year as my mother. He's 66 years old. He has been in prison since a decade before I was even born. It is time to release this man. He is innocent. He is innocent. He is innocent. And when we fight for Mumia, we fight for every single person caught up in this racist, white supremacist prison system. Mumia is the voice of the voiceless, and we will not let Larry Krasner, Governor Wolf, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, and John Wetzel snuff that voice out. What's the call? What's the call? What's the call?
Thank you so very much. Give it up for Ted Passon. Ted Kelly. First of all, I want to acknowledge that Mumia is alive today because an international movement cohered and marched in the streets in the 1990s when he was facing execution. Those people who led that movement then are still with us now. They're people like Joe Piet and Betsy Piet, Workers' World, Kamau, so many folks, journalists like Lynn Washington, and David, who wrote the book, David Lindorf, journalists who've been committed to truth. But I also want to amplify the name of Pam Africa because she has taken a hit with the stress of her brother, Mumia Abu-Jamal, and his illness. And the hopelessness that one feels when you see the person you love who's ill, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it because they're being held captive by a vindictive and hostile system. So I want to amplify Pam Africa's name because she is the mother of this movement and singularly the woman who's made sure that Mumia would live in the face of the state's homicidal designs on Mumia. I remember that when Mumia fell ill, during the last time that he was hospitalized, he fell ill, he fainted in the infirmary. That day, Pam Africa made the call. We're going to have a press conference in Frackville, Pennsylvania. And I said, the media's not going to show up. And she said, well, it doesn't matter. We're going to have it because it's the right thing to do, because there's a crisis, because we're talking about the humanity of a man and many others behind him in prison. She made the call and the media showed up because Philadelphia was moved by this moment of illness when our common humanity is amplified. I want to read a letter that has been written by Julia Wright, the daughter of Richard Wright, the very important, prominent novelist and activist in American society, Richard Wright. And after I read this, we're going to hear from Cindy Miller of Food Not Bombs, another organization that has anchored the struggle for freedom of prisoners and for freedom for Mumia Abu-Jamal and Russell Maroon Schultz, and freedom generally in this city. This is from Julia Wright, daughter of Richard Wright, the important African-American novelist and revolutionary. Since Mumia let us know about his alarming symptoms, serious alerts about his health have gone out internationally. Larry Krasner, Joe Wetzel, Tom Wolf know it. Their email boxes have been jammed full with messages pouring in from all over the country, from Germany, France, England, Spain, Africa, the Caribbean, you name it. If they couldn't get through Mumia supporters, they CC'd us, so we knew. If they couldn't get through to these offices, they CC'd supporters, and this is how we know. I sent out health alerts yesterday to the United Nations following my 18th of February testimony to the UNHRC for Mumia and our elderly political prisoners. These health alerts went to the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture and the UN Special Rapporteur against Racism, knowing that the latter was on parental leave. To my surprise, 3 hours later, a member of the UN Rapporteur against Racism staff responded, which is unheard of coming from such a large, complex, multi-tiered body as the UN. Her letter let me know that the state of Pennsylvania had already been under scrutiny by the UN Human Rights Council in April 2015 when 3 UN special rapporteurs for the people of African descent for the right to highest attainable physical and mental health against torture confronted the state of Pennsylvania with the serious allegations that, quote, Mumia's health situation has deteriorated over the past few months, resulting in his admission to the ICU of a nearby clinic on March 30th, 2015 in diabetic shock. It is alleged that as he had 3 comprehensive blood tests since February 2015, diabetes should have been diagnosed and treated accordingly. Instead, his medical condition was reportedly ignored by the prison guards, unquote. This is the second time there is smoke. This is the second time there must be fire. Back then, I'll repeat that. This is the second time there is smoke. This is the second time there must be fire. Back then, the U.S. ambassador to the UN replied in defense of the state of Pennsylvania that the DOC maintains its right not to disclose medical information on its inmates, that the state prisons have well-working channels for redress of grievances, and that in any event Mumia was filing a federal lawsuit to seek appropriate Hep C treatment. Obviously, the U.S. ambassador to the UN did not see the cruel contradiction at the heart of his reply. If the DOC has such an effective grievance redress policy, why was it necessary for a prisoner at death's door to file a time-consuming federal lawsuit to obtain the only treatment that could save his life? Yesterday's UN letter to us lets us know that we have full leeway to update our representations so that UN experts can take action as needed. We have no doubt that in this post-George Floyd and Breonna Taylor context, the UN's inquiry would hold the PADOC accountable. The PADOC is a glass house through which the world can see. So it should hesitate before throwing too many stones at our elderly prisoners susceptible to COVID camped away in holes used to quarantine. Let our prisoners go. Julia Wright, March 3rd, 2021. I think that deserves a round of applause. And now we bring to this stage in front of Larry Krasner's office, Cindy Miller, longtime activist against racism and for freedom in this city, member of Food Not Bombs.
Good morning. I'm putting this mask down because I'm standing 6 feet apart from everybody. So I wanted to, it's very difficult to speak to match the eloquence of Dr. Fernandez, Dr. Alvarez. I want to thank them, Pastor Keith, but I'm gonna piggyback off of what Julia Wright, daughter of Richard Wright, was saying in their letter about the Pennsylvania prisons. Of course, we've spoken deeply and at length about Mumia and Mumia's current illness and what that means to this movement and how it has affected so many people, how it has affected Pam Africa, right, who is like the sister of Mumia, and how it has affected her, how it has affected all of us in this movement who have been working tirelessly since we got this news over the past week, staying up day and night, having emergency phone calls, putting out information, always putting out information and updating what we put out. But as two very important historical figures have said, and I don't want to exactly try to say their words because I know that I can't, so I'm paraphrasing. Assata Shakur talked about nobody has ever gotten out from under their oppression by appealing to the moral conscience of their oppressors. Okay, so we've, like I said before, we've marched, we've had car caravans, we've had demonstrations, you know, oh please, Mr. Wetzel, please have a conscience, don't stop, you know, stop this, what you're doing. And the second one is Kwame Ture, who said, let me see if I can remember this. Oh, in order to appeal to the moral conscience, I'm paraphrasing, you gotta have a conscience. In order to appeal to the moral conscience of somebody, they have to have a moral conscience. So, in my opinion, a lot of this appealing to their conscience is just a waste of our time. I was taught by an incarcerated person at Pine Grove that I communicate with all the time, that if you want to find out why something is happening, always follow the money. Follow the money. It's, you know, moral pleas don't get through, but perhaps money issues will. So I wrote this down, and this list might not be 100% accurate, and it might not be 100% complete, but it's a start. Think about it. Perhaps you can add to it. We're looking at Aramark, the corporation that has their big headquarters up here at 2400 Market. They provide the food. Do you know they won the contract to provide the food because they got it in at 99 cents a meal? These incarcerated people are eating crap food that costs 99 cents a meal. We're also talking about a company called Securus that like runs the whole phone system. And if you've ever had calls with people that are incarcerated, you know that voice on the phone that, you know, this call is being recorded. But that's Securus. And the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections gets a kickback from Securus to run their phone system. Let me see now. Okay. All the medical care in some prisons, and I don't know, I can't speak to them all. There's, I believe, 25 state correctional facilities in Pennsylvania. Most of them are under the wing of a company called WellPath for medical care, and the WellPath doctors, and that's under contract too. That a doctor only usually comes in once or twice a week. That nurses are only contracted to spend a certain amount of hours with a patient, you know, an incarcerated person, and all medicines are like overcharged. So we know that from our lawsuit with Mumia, trying to get him the hepatitis C medication. Usually what they do is give them 2 aspirin. No matter what you complain about, you get 2 aspirin. Also, did you know that incarcerated people have to pay to go to the doctor? It's $5 to go to the doctor, which to us sounds like, well, $5. but they're making like 19 cents an hour, 24 cents an hour, 32 cents an hour. If they're working, $5 a visit to go to the doctor. Right, right. Another one is smart communications. All the mail that we send to incarcerated people now has to be sent to smart communications down in Florida, where it is Xeroxed, filed, who knows, they keep these files of our letters, and then given to the incarcerated people. So if you send cards or photographs, they're just going to get a Xerox of a photograph. They're just going to get a Xerox of a card. Now, when that contract came up, it was like within 8 days. There was no bidding. They just immediately, Smart Communications got that contract. There was no bidding war at all. Next. There's a lot of these, so this is probably boring. This is probably like a real, I don't know, academic type stuff. But this is the truth. And we need to put out the truth. And people, a lot of people don't know these issues. Another one is the incarcerated people have these little tablets. It's like it's kind of like a small, what a tablet, like smaller than a laptop computer that they can write their emails on. The tablets, which by the way, tablets, televisions, whatever, they have to buy from commissary. And the last incarcerated person who's a member of Food Not Bombs needed a new television. So we had to forward that person $203. The same TV out here on the street was like $89. So the commissary charged them like $204. But at any rate, let's see. These tablets, like getting back to what I was talking about before, these tablets are a ridiculous price. They're like $147 when, like, if you're out here, you can buy it for like $33. And it's administered by a corporation called Global Telelink, GTL. Once again, privatized. All this stuff in the prisons has been privatized since the 90s. This is money. Money's going down. Money's changing hands. The prisons are getting kickbacks from all these companies. Another one is the commissary, where incarcerated people can add to the crappy food that they're being given. They can buy extra food and other items too, underwear, socks. That's administered by a company called Access. Now, Access gets a kickback too. Remember when I just talked about the televisions, how out here an $89 television is $203 in there. Money's changing hands. And the last one that I've done research on is called, it's Polycom Real Desktop Real Presence. And that is, since incarcerated people are being denied video visits, in-person visits during this COVID time, we must do video visits with them. And the Department of Corrections was first hooked up with Zoom, and all these visits were conducted by Zoom. And then the Department of Corrections got smart and realized, wait a minute, we're giving Zoom all this extra money. So they created their own system. It's called Polycom Real Desk, Real Desk Presence or Real Presence Desktop. Anyway, the important word is Polycom. Very unreliable. Those who have used it, it's very unreliable. It kicks you off all the time. It slows down. It drops out. But money is changing hands. The DOC is now not giving any more money to Zoom. They've got their own. So when we look at what's going on in all these prisons and how horribly, people are being treated and what's going, just remember, it's not by a moral sense, by appealing to their morals, that we're going to get these people out. It's a money thing. It's a money thing. We need to, and this is the beginning of our campaign, we need to boycott Aramark in March 15th. We're going to go up to Aramark headquarters at 2400 Walnut and have a demonstration there. And we're working on this behind-the-scenes stuff, which many people don't even realize. The information hasn't been gotten out enough yet. So I wanted to let you all know about that. And I'll end with, what's the call?
Freedom!
What's the call?
Freedom!
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was Cindy Miller from Food Not Bombs. Thank you for all of your work. Mass incarceration is the third largest employer in the United States. The third largest employer in the United States is the guards, the cops, the whole carceral apparatus. We are going to ask Gabe Bryant to join us and see us off and give us marching orders. Gabe Bryant, who's a fierce leader, young leader right here in this city, fighting against white supremacy, police brutality, but also working with young people toward building a new society and a new world, a society that we can call our own. Gabe Bryant.
Free Mumia! Free Mumia! Free Mumia! Free Mumia! Bring him home! Bring him home! Bring him home! Bring him home! It's so good to see. Free Ant, that's right, free Ant too. We're gonna bring Ant home too, by the way. He's home, but we're gonna make sure that he's free. That's the key word. You know, I want to talk briefly as I listen to all my comrades speaking today. And more importantly, I read these signs. And I thought about the ways in which we have to analyze the devastation of falling in line. How deadly it is and how tragic it is when a person chooses to not act on their own behalf, to not act on what's in their spirit or in their soul, but to fall in line. See, I don't pretend to know everybody who works in this building. Perhaps there's somebody who says, you know what? I'm with y'all around Mumia Abu-Jamal. He should be home. But what do they choose to do instead? They fall in line. The top down. The top says we're going to do this, so they do this. They don't do that. Somebody might be thinking to themselves, you know what? There's enough evidence with those 6 boxes. There's enough evidence based on what Lord Washington has said. There's enough evidence with the Polacar pictures, but they fall in line. What have the prisons showed us? Year in and year out for decades. Bad water, bad food, horrific conditions. And perhaps there's somebody in the prison who says, you know what? These individuals should be treated better. But instead, what do they choose to do? They fall in line. We are looking at the mass devastation of falling in line against one's personal spiritual center. It's a major contradiction of our era. It's a major contradiction of these times. Acting against one's own conscience. And so when I think about the work today, this is our 3rd time just in a week and a half. We've been out here. That deserves a fist up for that. Fist up for that. This is the 3rd time in a week and a half time
just got a call from Bob Boyle, one of Mumia's, oh my God, one of Mumia's attorneys. Mumia has COVID. He's in the infirmary. Their attorneys called our attorneys. He had gotten a rapid test. And they conducted another test, and it came out positive. So Mumia Abu-Jamal has COVID-19. That's what we got for you. There is smoke, and I think we need to start a fire, and we need to really bring Mumia home where he can get the care he needs. And Mumia has pre-existing conditions. He's got liver damage that was made by the Pennsylvania DOC because they failed to treat his hepatitis C in a timely fashion. He has high blood pressure, and like so many other prisoners, he has been sedentary in a prison 23 hours a day for a year. The kind of deconditioning and lung problems that kind of isolation produces is epic. We have a state with blood in its hands. At least 4 people that we know of have died in the prison that houses Mumia. At least 4 prisoners who've died of COVID-19. Those are the numbers that have been released. We know there are more. Over 100 prisoners have been killed by the Pennsylvania DOC as a result of COVID in prison in the last year. Numbers that they've released, not the real numbers. So this is really a moment for the movement to bring Mumia home domestically, internationally, to fight for Mumia to be immediately released. He spent 28 and a half years on death row unconstitutionally. The answer to that wrong is immediate release. Should have been released, should never have been incarcerated, and now they're attempting execution by other means. We are not going to stand by. We're going to say, release Mumia, release Russell Moon-Schultz, release all aging people in prison, and let our people go. White supremacy, the white supremacy of the state and of this office is responsible for incarcerating more black and brown people in this county than in any other county in the country. That is white supremacy, nothing more, nothing less. In this age of Black Lives Matter, that means let people go that you put in through white supremacy, through white supremacist policies. People are vulnerable to death. This is a homicidal system of imprisonment that we are seeing. Mumia Abu-Jamal has been tested a second time, and he has COVID-19, WHYY, and the other outfits that were out here have now left. But we have just gotten a call from Bob Boyle, health attorney of Mumia Abu-Jamal, who won the suit along with Brett Grody that got Mumia the Hep C treatment he needed. Bob Boyle has just called to say that Mumia Abu-Jamal has COVID-19. That Mumia Abu-Jamal has COVID-19, so it's time to mobilize and to raise hell and to light up the fire so that we bring Mumia home. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to join this conversation. Perhaps you can respond and react, Gabe, to what this means to you and to the people of this city.
all I can say is that I'm beyond angry. I'm beyond fired up. I was already operating under the fact that he had COVID when the word went out last week. You know, even though it came back negative over the weekend, we understand that those tests aren't always 100%, nor do we trust the word of the prisons. So what does this mean for Philadelphia? We gotta turn up, we gotta be fired up, and we gotta bring Mumia home. That's it. No other recourse, there's no other pathway, there's no other journey. We just gotta get them out, man. As somebody who I mentioned before, who has had people in my life who have passed away due to COVID, I understand, just like many of you all, the pain and suffering that you deal with as a family member when it comes to somebody who has COVID-19, let alone somebody who can't physically distance within the confines of the prison. And so with that being said, all I want to say is this: I'm going to do everything in my power to mobilize those of us who care about those who are incarcerated, who care about those who are on the inside, who cares about those of us who are locked in these cages, to come on out and to be a part of this movement in any way that they can. Because we really got to up the ante. The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching what's happening in Philadelphia, what's happening in Pennsylvania with regards to our folks like Mumia Abu-Jamal, Jamil Al-Amin, and so many others. I'll close with this. In the movement, we also talk a lot about reparations. Our Baba Kamal knows that. But to have full reparations to repair the harm that's been done, we got to bring those political prisoners home, Brother Kamal. That's the full repair. When we talk about within the BPRC, the Black Philly Radical Collective, one of our demands is full release of all political prisoners. All of them. All of them. All of them. Not one of them, not two of them. All of them. Free them all. But this news right here is a gut punch. It's a gut punch and it's a dagger. Because we thought we knew the truth, but now we definitely know the truth 100%. And so we working. That's right. That's right. You already know what it is. So let's be organized, strategized. We're going to have to keep coming out here. We're going to have to make ourselves and themselves uncomfortable. But we got to do whatever's right so they can do what's right to get our brother home. Free him all!
Free 'em all!
Free him all!
Free 'em all!
Free him all!
Free 'em all!
Free him all!
Should we go in this office right now is the question. Should we ask for a meeting with the district attorney of Philadelphia who was put in office by the black working class? If you ask the black working class what they want DA Larry Krasner to do, they will tell you, we want our people, our leaders, our elders to come home, including Mumia Abu-Jamal. So I actually think that we need to immediately meet with Larry Krasner and demand action now. Mumia does not need to be in a prison. No prisoner with COVID in a humane society should be behind bars. Mumia Abu-Jamal, Philadelphia's native son, is going to be killed by Larry Krasner and the state and municipality of Philadelphia and the ruling class of Pennsylvania. We're not going to let it happen. We're going to fight and we're going to demand to immediately meet with someone that can free him now. That's what we're calling immediate release now. So please stay in tune, stay connected to social media, and we will let you know what comes of our demand to immediately meet with someone in the DA's office. Thank you very much.
Brick by brick, wall by wall, we're gonna free Mumia Abu-Jamal. Brick by brick, wall by wall, we're gonna free Mumia Abu-Jamal. Brick by brick, wall by wall, we're gonna free Mumia Abu-Jamal. Brick by brick, wall by wall, we're gonna free Mumia Abu-Jamal. What time, y'all? All power to the people? All power to the people? All power